everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Anderson. I am a freelance artist and teacher hoping to inspire creativity. If you would like more videos like these, please take a second to like and subscribe down below. It really helps in the algorithm of YouTube to help get my videos seen to more people. If you want to receive notifications of when I go live, please make sure to hit the bell and choose all notifications. If you have any questions during or after the class, make sure to pop a comment down below and I will answer it as soon as I can. I'll be leaving timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the start of class, but I will be sharing announcements as well as supplies, so make sure to stick around for that. If interested in learning more about my classes, please follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And feel free to check me out on Patreon, where I teach exclusive classes to those who support me. In Patreon, I also give traceables for all of my live classes, including this one. Lastly, if you would like to share your work after class with me and others who painted along with us, please head over to Facebook, as I have an artist community where you can share your finished painting with us. I'll leave links for all of that in the description box below. Thanks for joining me, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to another live stream. I am super excited to be here and have you along for this painting session. So welcome in. Let me know where you're painting from, like where you are, if you're painting with anyone, or maybe how long you've been painting, if you're new to the channel, all of that information. Just let me know. I love hearing where all of my students for the night are and their journey. But yeah, let's go ahead and we're gonna go over some supplies, some quick announcements, and then we will get straight to painting, okay? So just to start off with, I do have a traceable for this event, as previously noted in the intro. It is not, my traceables are never required to take the class. For sure, you are allowed to draw it on yourself or just go with the flow. You're allowed to put this on by yourself. The traceables are for not only those who support me, but also for those who are interested in just a little bit more guidance. And that's kind of how it started off as. Just some of my patrons were asking about, you know, a traceable, or if they could have some guidance, some extra help for the classes. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. But yeah, so yeah, I have that available in my Patreon. It's in the link in the description, as well as I posted it in the live chat, so you can click there. It's also in all of the other posts on my Facebook page or on my YouTube community. You'll find a link for it. But yeah, that's a way to support me as an artist, as a teacher, keep these classes free, and also you get something out of it and you get a little bit more guidance. And you'll not only get the traceable for this one, you'll get them for the rest of the month too. So the beginning of the month is actually the best time to sign up for Patreon, because I do mine monthly. So you'll get the whole month of classes. And yeah, it's a great trade-in. You get something, I get something, and we're all happy. So yeah, that is always an option. But again, if you want to do it yourself, that is totally fine. Get in some sketching. But if you are doing that and you're not doing the traceable, I would try to draw that now before we get started, just so you have something on the page. It's pretty simple concept. For those of you who are drawing it, the head is pretty much in the middle. You have a pretty round head, and then it comes down to the neck, shoulders. You can add the ears, you can add the bun on top, you can make any sort of, you know, changes to that. You can change the flower, you can change the colors, but it's a fairly basic shape. So hopefully you guys, if you don't want to use the traceable, hopefully you guys, it should be fairly easy for those who want to do it. Okay, so that's in my Patreon. I'm using an 11x14 stretched canvas, so I have sides, top, and bottom, so I will be painting those. I like to wrap the canvas. That's what it's called, by painting the sides. I like to wrap the canvas because then I can just put it on the wall. But for those of you who don't like doing that, you can always paint it black at the end, or you can leave it white if you don't care to do that. I always liked having it, it feels more finished if I paint the sides. And I usually just do that as I go. So as I paint near the edge, I'll just go around and wrap it with those same colors. I'll just extend the the front panel painting. I have 2 things of water. I mainly only use one, but sometimes my water gets dirty, so I have a second one just in case. Paper towel, palette. I do have a palette knife so that I can mix all of my paint. If you have a flat palette and you don't have a palette knife, I highly recommend getting one. These are the 2 tools that I use the most during class in terms of my palette, because I get to scrape off old paint that I'm not going to use anymore or that has dried, which allows me more space to put on paint that I'm going to use, as well as my palette knife I use in every single class to mix paint before I paint on the canvas. So highly recommend that. All of the supplies that I do go over are in my Amazon shop, so if you are interested in buying the exact colors or tools that I use, all of that is in my Amazon shop, which I have listed in the description. Okay. But speaking of other supplies, I have brushes for you. So these are like the go-to brushes for all of my classes, but I'll go over them. This is a medium to large filbert. I have a smaller filbert for the smaller details. And then I have 3 round brushes. One is a larger round brush. I also call it my cloud brush, my texture brush, or my dry brush, my dry brushing brush. Because it's a little bit more frayed, it's textured. I can give texture or use a dry brush without feeling like I'm going to mess up another brush, because this one's kind of already messed up because that's what I use it for. It's specific towards giving texture or clouds or anything like that. And then I have 2 small round brushes. One is a little bit pointed and the other one's a little bit more blunt, so I can do more rounded edges with this one, and the pointed one I can get a little bit more fine detail. And then of course I have a liner brush. I have a small liner brush. I would say medium to small liner brush. It's not super small, but it is a 1 in this kit, which most of these brushes were given to me by Grabby, so thank you to Grabby for giving me those. But I do have a couple brushes outside of the kit that I do enjoy over, just because I've been using them longer, and I don't know where there we go. I have a specific liner brush that I like to use. It just works really well and it doesn't fray, so I'm gonna get that one out. But yeah, so those are my go-to brushes for all of my classes. If you've been painting with me for any amount of time, you'll know those brushes by heart by now. And then other tools that you might want to have on hand. I'm not sure, did I put it in the did I say Bokeh with Bokeh? Okay, I plan to do Bokeh for this class just because I think having that type of out of focus texture for the background will look pretty. There is a tiny bit of Bokeh up here in the reference at the top of it a little bit, but I'm going to put in a little bit more. It's just a really fun and easy way to add texture to the background without adding too much like detail. So anyways, it's a really fun way of doing it, and so that's what I will be doing. If you do not have sponge daubers, that's okay. You don't have to do it that way. I can show a way to do without it. You can also, I'm sure there are tons of Bokeh tutorials on YouTube as well. You feel free to look up some of those. I'm going to be using these. If you're in class right now and you want me to show you a different version, you can do it with a texture brush. So I have this, and essentially you're just going to get the same color that you would be using on the sponge, and you're just going to go in circles until it's kind of blurred out. And maybe we'll add a couple of those too. So maybe I'll do it anyways. But yeah, those are the brushes, the tools, and then let's go over some colors. Now the colors can be really whatever you want. You can change it to fall colors. When I originally did this, when I originally got this reference, everything was very green, and I was like, I really want something a little bit more fall. So I definitely took out a lot of the yellows and greens and kind of toned it all down. I might even add a little bit more fall-like colors in the background, less greens and more yellows and oranges, but we will see. And then I have these bright pink flowers that I put in her hair that I'm excited for. So let's go ahead and get started with the colors For the colors, the ones that I will be using, I have my black and my white off to the side. And then I have a raw umber, I have a green, a yellow ochre, and then I also will be getting out a bright yellow. And when I say bright, I just mean just like a yellow, like a medium yellow. You could also get out a even brighter yellow for the insides, but that's totally up to you and what color theme, kind of like what colors you want to do. But yeah, there's that. And then I do have a pink. I have a pink. And then I have my phthalo blue kind of on hand in case I want to add any blue or darkness to the green leaves. In terms of the traceable, I put in the very few details of the actual flowers because we're going to be a little bit more impressionistic with the flowers and a little bit more like go with the flow. So I didn't really want to draw them all in, and again with the leaves and like nature, and it's very much I wanted to be a little bit more go with the flow when I'm painting like leaves and florals and things like that. I didn't want to be tied down to the reference, so that's why I didn't really give too much detail when I was transferring my traceable. So hopefully you're in the same boat and you can just have fun when we get to that. But I'm going to try not to go overboard because sometimes I just want to keep adding it, and sometimes less is more. So we'll figure that out when we get there. But yeah, those are the colors. Somebody asked me on Facebook what they would do for a darker complexion or a different hairstyle. I'm specifically doing a white female with brown hair and with some highlights in that. That's specific to what I am doing. It's like what inspired me to do something like this was kind of the messy hair bun. If you want instruction on how to paint a different type of hairstyle but in this up bun, feel free to look up that separately from my tutorial. This is the first hair tutorial I'm doing. I've done hair in the past in portraits and things like that, but I've never taught it. So this is the only one on my channel that is going to be hair, but I look forward to exploring hair. If you have a different type of hair or complexion that you are interested in learning, please comment down below and let me know. I love painting what my students and fans want to paint, but a lot of times people don't tell me that. So feel free, if you want a different complexion or a different hairstyle, please let me know. And I can prioritize it in my upcoming months. But with that said, somebody asked what they would do if they had a darker complexion or black ringlets, like black hair that's very, very tightly curled. And my advice, well, my first advice was her is to look up a tutorial specific on that. But my advice would be to make sure that this is a light complexion with light brown hair. And the background complements that contrast. So it is darker in the background than it is where she is. And I would say that make sure that if you do have a darker skinned woman, make sure that the background is lighter than her, so that you can still see all of the outlines and the complexion and the hair, because you're gonna want that contrast. So just keep that in mind if you are changing the complexion or the color of the hair and things like that. Okay, make sure that there's still that contrast. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully you have this sketch on there, and if not, go ahead and start that now. I want to go over a couple other classes that are going on, what we did last week, some classes in Patreon that are available right now. But go ahead, put this on the canvas. Again, I have the traceable if you need it, but make sure you have that on there, and we'll get started in just a minute. Last week, if you aren't sure, if you painted with me, this is what we did last week. It was a lot of fun. I think it came out so good. I almost didn't put in the red because I was like, this looks really good without the red. But after I put in the red, I was glad that I did it. And I actually wish that I would have put in more red in the background, but I think it came out really lovely. So if you want to paint it, this is a free class that we did last Wednesday. Go paint it. It's free. The traceable, if you want it, is in my Patreon. But things, I don't think I used a traceable with this one. I taught it without a traceable. So yeah, go paint it. It was a lot of fun. And it came out lovely. In Patreon, I have 2 classes currently that I want to talk about. One is, this one was actually available last month, which if you sign up for the magenta tier, you'll get all of the Friday tutorials. And this is what we did last month. This month's has not come out yet. It'll be available next Friday. So not in a couple days, but next Friday. Usually it's available the second Friday. But last week I took off because it was my birthday. Or the first week I took off because it was my birthday. So last week we didn't do that last week. We did that 2 weeks ago, last week of September. But yeah, so last week I took off, so the Friday tutorial of this month will be available in a week. But that being said, if you sign up for this month, you'll get not only that one, but also this one. So I wanted to share that as well. And then lastly, for our upper tier cobalt, so we just started this castle. We finished the sky, and I don't know why. I think it's so pretty. Like, I don't see skies very often with this kind of like streaky clouds and like sky, and I don't know, just the colors. I think it's probably because it's my favorite colors, like that teal blue, kind of turquoise teal blue. I think it's so pretty. We're not done, obviously. There's still a lot to do. We plan to paint this over the course of a few months, so this month and next month. So if you guys paint with me every week, you will get to see the progression of this. And if you don't paint with me every week, that's fine. I would highly suggest going on my Facebook, which I will post a link right now, because this is where I post 90% of like everything that I post. So it's really important. That's where I post upcoming classes, upcoming schedules, links to traceables or supplies that you might need for the next class. I post everything on my Facebook. So if you're not in my Facebook page, please go and follow me there. I also have a Facebook community, which I will talk about a little bit later, where you can post your paintings, but that's also a good place to be. Okay, hopefully everybody has their canvas prepped. I realized my water was not on my desk. Alrighty. Are you guys ready to paint? I am. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is we're going to come up with the background colors. Now, depending on what colors you want to do, that is up to you. I'm going to do greens, but I'm going to do like brown greens and like brown oranges, and I think that would look pretty. So I'm going to get out some white, some black, some brown, and then I'm gonna do my yellow ochre, which if you don't have yellow ochre, that's fine. You'll just have to add more brown to your whatever colors you add to. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of green. And then I'm actually going, I don't think I went over this, I forgot to have some red in there. I'm gonna add a little bit of red in there so that I can make some oranges and stuff, okay? Alright, so let's have fun making some colors. I'm gonna do the green first. So I have green and brown, maybe a little bit of black, a little bit of yellow. And you can mix these one at a time. I know the color palettes of like what each color does, so it's pretty easy for me to figure out what colors I need. But essentially your brown and your green is going to make a very earthy green. The black is going to darken it while taking a little bit of the saturation down. And then the yellow makes it more of a yellow green. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of white, and that also helps kind of gray out the color. And then I'm going to do a brown that's a little bit more of a yellow and black. And this is actually what I'm going to use for the background. So what we're going to do first, these are the only two colors that I'm going to use first, and we're going to do a bit of a wash. And the reason for this is because putting on these colors first before we get into the rest of the colors will help solidify the colors of the undercoat, because getting that first coat on over the white, especially when we're using, I am using a unprimed canvas. It's directly out of the Hobby Lobby like wrapping. I didn't gesso it. It's just I think it's pre-gesso, it's pre-primed, but I didn't do anything to the canvas. It's a raw canvas for me. So being able to put in some color before, and then you also get to figure out what colors you want. So let's say you did these two colors and you're like, oh, these look nice. And then you put them on the canvas and you're like, oh, actually, I want these colors to be different. It gives you opportunity to correct before you feel like you're past the point of correction. So anyways, so you're gonna get a big brush, a little bit of water, and we're just going to add color. I'm gonna move this a little bit. I know it's gonna be in my face for the thing, but I can't see the, oop, I hate moving this. It's a little too low. Okay, there we go. Hopefully y'all can still hear me and I didn't mess it up. It's important. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this and we're just going to, this is called a underglaze or an undercoat, and it's a really quick way to add color to your canvas without feeling the need to be perfect or feeling like it's like, you know, you can't change it. I'm going to start going into the browns. I'm just going to blend those a little bit. If you are new to painting, this is one of the things that I've really loved doing with beginners, because a lot of times it can be really intimidating painting for like the first time, because You don't know how much water to add to things. You don't know how much paint. You don't know how long it takes for paint to dry yet. And so this gives you a nice, like, I don't know, like a playful time to explore it without feeling like, well, this is how my painting's gonna look. Because let me tell you, this is the ugly phase. This is the beginning stages. Your painting is not going to look like this when we're done. Like, every beginner needs to know that. Every seasoned painter knows this. That it has to kind of go through a ugly phase. There are very few paintings. It is possible, but there are very few paintings that I do that don't go through some type of an ugly phase. And when you're new, sometimes you don't know that. You don't realize that that's like a normal thing for paintings to go through. All right, so now that we just simply have color on our canvas, it's going to be a lot easier to add color later. Okay. Make sure I got all the sides, top. Okay. So that is a great start. I know it might not look like it, but that's a great start. So now I'm going to make a lot more of those colors. I like those colors. I'm going to go a little bit more browns and oranges this time, because I think that's what I want. I kind of did the greens, and while I like it, I'm going to go a little bit more. I'm going to go darker, more browns, oranges, and that is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to, this is kind of all a little bit dry, so I'm just going to move it off my canvas. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to do the dark color first. So I'm going to do my brown, my black, and I am going to need more brown. And again, this is raw umber. Go even darker. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red, which is essentially adding like an orange. I'm just trying to make it a little bit warmer. Okay, that's a good dark brown, and then I'm going to make a little bit of a lighter brown by adding yellow, red, and white. I'm gonna add my brighter yellow just so I can get a little bit of that pop of color in here. Okay, I think that's good. It's kind of like a light yellowish brown, I would say. But on the canvas, it's gonna have those orangey tones. And then I'm gonna do a brown. I'm gonna do a green, but it's not gonna be as green. It's gonna be like a green brown. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do a second coat, but this time we're going to focus a little bit more on like less water and more of just like rough blending. It does not have to be perfectly blended. If you plan to not do bokeh, then I might do more of like a textured background with where you can clearly see the strokes of your paint. I would use a flat brush so you can see like the corners of it and it's like intentional. I did a painting recently with that. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, we did a painting recently that had that type of a texture, and it came out really, really nice. I really enjoyed just like the whole process of it. Let me see if I can just quickly see. Yeah, so it was 2 weeks ago. Well, it was almost 3 weeks ago because we didn't paint last week. We painted the Redwood Railroad last week, or that last week, and then the week prior to that. So it was 3 weeks ago today. We did a pretty mallard, and the background was kind of just like a textured green background so that the duck would really stand out. So if you're interested in doing that type of background, you can always pause this one, go over to that, kind of go to the background section and see how I did that. It's pretty much just, I don't know, you're just adding your strokes and you're not worrying about blending at all. You're actually trying not to blend. But for this, we're going to blend as much as we can, but it doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to be adding texture on top of it. Okay, but here we go. Yeah, try not to add too much water to it because we want to be able to put that paint on there. We want the paint to be the canvas and not to have too much, because the more water you add, the more see-through it is, the more translucent it is. Thankfully, because we've already done this wash, it won't matter as much if you have too much, but just keep that in mind. More water means more translucent. All right, I'm gonna work kind of bottom up. I'm gonna focus on the dark parts first. And I'm gonna add like the dark black where I feel like it needs to be. I'm kind of going into that green, the darker green that I have. And I added some white to my canvas, and we're just gonna kind of see what happens. I'm going to blend it in a little bit, move it around. Gonna add a little bit of that light brownish. I'm kind of just like dabbing my brush, and this is all still wet. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to here, and I'm just kind of going in circles a little bit. Another way I like to blend is doing what I call like a figure eight, where I do this with my brush. I go back and forth, but I touch. Here, I'll do it up here, where I will I'll touch it, and then I'll lift it off, and then I'll touch it again, and it's like a crisscross feeling, but it's very fast. There's a couple trees up here that you can kind of put in here. I just have barely any white on my brush, and I'm just kind of placing it in there, but again, you don't have to do exactly what this reference does. I'm going to put in some more dark. And again, I'm just putting the different colors in there, blending a little bit. It's really important to try to blend while it's all wet. It's much easier to blend while everything is wet. I'm taking a little bit of green and a little bit of white while this is all still wet. You'll see I'm just kind of moving my brush, creating almost like a little branch that's coming out here in the distance. Gonna get in here some dark brown and maybe a little bit of black in here. Blending it pretty well, but it's not perfect, and that's okay. I don't want it to be. There's a sort of like green patch bush here at the bottom that I'm adding. Just with my brushes and kind of wiggling my brush, allowing that to blend in a little bit to the top. Got a little bit of white. Just tapping it, adding just different color variation. I'm being really loose with my brush right now. I'm not holding it in any, I'm holding it very far away from it, and I'm being very quick with my motions, very loose. And I really like how that's coming out. I'm going to grab my texture brush, so my larger round that's kind of frayed a little bit. I'm going to grab some of this brown, orangey brown color and mix some white in with it to make it just a little bit lighter. I'm gonna rinse it off, or like wipe it off a little bit, just so I have a little bit of color on it. And then do a couple circles here and there in the background. You can do a couple circles if you want. I'm simply placing my brush, and then I'm just keeping that there and going in a circle, and it's slowly creating a brushed kind of look. And the longer you do it, the more And there you go. You can add that pretty much wherever you want. I'm going to go into a greenish version of this. So I'm going to use the green and the white. I'll wipe off my brush. That's not super. We're just gonna add a little bit of texture here and there by adding little circles, little imperfections in our background. And in terms of this, I would just like to point out that more is better. If you don't do enough of it, it's going to look odd. If all of your circles are perfectly placed apart and they're all the same size, it's going to look off. So if you're gonna do this, you gotta commit to like really doing it and not just doing some of it, because then it's gonna look worse than when you started. But even the amount I've already done looks better than like 2 seconds after I started, right? So okay, so I made a brown that was a little bit more brighter orange, and I definitely like that better. I'm going to just put it in a couple places, not too much. And then I'm going to grab this medium one. No, I'm going to do the smaller one. I'm going to do the smaller one. And I'm going to put white only on like the outer edge. And a tiny bit in the middle. So I'm actually doing this with my brush so I can be a little bit more precise. You can come in here with different colors. I will say it's a lot faster with this thing. But I think I've already added a lot of what I want to add. I'm gonna do some brown ones up here. I'm slowly dissipating them out. And I could legit spend like all night just doing the bokeh effect. So I will I will spare you all of the next 10 hours of me just hyper focusing on on bokeh. So yeah, I think that's enough to get the look I'm going for. If you did use a sponge, please make sure to rinse it out immediately. Get as much of that paint out as you can. If you can go and wash it out with soap right now, feel free. If you rinse it out with water and just kind of keep it wet, you should be fine to just make sure that you wash it afterwards, after the class. But for now, I'm going to put it aside and then we're going to go from there. Okay, so that in mind, keeping all of that in mind, I will remember that when I do my brushes. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get a good start on this, the rest of this. I'm gonna go ahead and use some of these colors for the hair, and we're gonna do a quick undercoat so we can figure out our colors, right? I'm going to do an undercoat with this like brown, but I'm going to mix it with some white. So I'm just going to do this. I kind of go around. This is like the blondest blonde that I could do, apparently. It's pretty close to the actual color of like the highlights. And note that I am painting in the direction of the hair because it helps me to do that. And you could already start playing with the highlights if you wanted to. You can come in here with a clean brush, and wherever you see a highlight, you can take out. You can take it out. But that's only if you want to do that. If you think it will help you. If you think it will confuse you, then don't worry about it yet. I'm gonna keep going with this. And again, remember that the purpose of this is really just to get out any sort of white, because it's a lot easier to cover up another color than it is that stark white. But speaking of white, her complexion is fairly white, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab this. I'm just gonna use the color that's on my brush to mix in with this white. And we're going to put on a first coat of this. And this is where you're gonna put in the, like, her ears, I mean, mine got pretty much covered up, so I'm going to just put those back in. And I'm going ahead with my white and finishing out the shirt. to do. All right. So by doing that, I've now seen that I need to go in a little bit further with the background. Thankfully, it's just the brown. And what's nice about it being a textured background is that you're not really gonna tell that I had to add it there. All right. I'm going to wait on the flowers. I'm gonna go ahead and do a layer of the bottom, and I think I'm gonna keep it a kind of the charcoal gray. My black section has all dried, so I'm just going to remove that, add more black. I'm going to pre-mix a little bit of white in here. So I just mixed white and black, mostly black, a little bit of white, and kind of made like a charcoal gray for her shirt. And originally I wanted the shirt to be normal and not like off to the side, but I think it gives it more character. So I'm gonna have it go kind of slanted like in the picture a little bit. Not quite as perfect as I have originally. And remember that this is just the first coat. Like, this isn't what it's gonna look like. We're gonna have more coats giving it shadow and highlight. And can you believe we're only like an hour into this painting? We've done this in an hour. We've covered a lot of ground. While this is still wet, I'm just going to put a little bit of white streaks in here. It'll be able to blend really easily. Just kind of start that process. I'm gonna go ahead and take that dark charcoal and go ahead and put in a couple shadows. We can always come back to it, but that's a good start. Over here, I'm gonna do the same thing, but just a little bit less because it's not as bright. I'm gonna get out some black, do a couple more darks. And do some darks underneath here. We're just gonna play with the shadows. So before we do any more, we're going to go ahead and let this dry, because if we don't let it dry and it starts becoming tacky like mine is, I will start actually taking the paint off of the canvas, and that is not what I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on the underside of this. Alright, so I think that's a pretty good, I would be happy with that even if I didn't add anything else. I probably will, but just as a first coat, just getting in some of those details is helpful. All right. So you probably noticed that the head itself looks a lot skinnier than the reference, and that is because I went in a little bit with the background, because I want to be able to go out with the hair and still have the background behind it for all of like the wispy hairs. So that is why the shape of it looks a little off right now. It's gonna come out to about, you know, yay big like normal, but just so you know, that's kind of the thought behind it. So I need to do another coat of skin before I move on to the hair, and we need to finish the hair before we do the flowers, which is really what I want to do, but unfortunately it has to be the last thing we get to do. But it'll be worth it. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to do my small filbert. I'm going to grab some white. And her skin is very, very white, so I'm just going to grab a tiny bit of this brown and mix it in. It's going to be like a off-white, and I'm just going to add white to the places that are like super white. So I'm going to brush up into the hair. I'm going to go into just my plain white. I'm going to go into a little bit of this dark brown right here, just to give a little bit of a, I'm just pulling it down to get a little bit of that shadow that the hair will eventually give, but it's easier to do that while it's wet. So I'm going to go back into my white and just focus on putting in that second coat. And while I do this, I'm cleaning up any edges. We're starting to get into the final stages of our painting, so I'm being more careful around certain edges. I am going a little bit slower to get cleaner lines. Right now I'm just fixing the shape of the neck. I felt that it was a little bit too thick, so I'm just kind of recreating my greens to try to help reshape it a little bit. But thankfully the hair will also help that, so. right, so now that we've got that, we can clean up anything we need to afterwards if needed, but I think that is pretty much good. All right, so now we get to start on the hair. So what we're gonna do, I kind of like this golden brown that we have right here, so I might keep that as the main hair color. I'm gonna start just adding layers, and what I mean by that is I'm gonna start adding wherever I see the darkest darks, I'm going to start adding this. And you might think, well, why aren't you adding the color of the darkest dark? Because hair is made in layers, and if you go too dark too fast, it's really hard to bounce back. So we're gonna add more of like the mediums to the dark areas, and we can always darken it from there. So I'm using just my filbert, and I'm brushing down into the bottom area. Staying away from the highlights for now, and we're just gonna build it up. I'm gonna go in with my darks and focus on this shadowing wherever there's shadow. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and actually make the hair color now. Make some space here. So satisfying. Okay, let's go ahead and make our hair color. It's not going to be as this brown, because this is like brown right out of the I still right out of the bottle. I still want to have those darkened tones. So we're going to take this brown, and we're going to take this light brown, and we're just going to add black and white to both of them, and that will tone down everything. It's like adding gray to it. And that's a much more realistic hair color, even with it being dyed, because we still kind of want those fall colors. All right. I'm going to take these dark colors and I'm going to add more of the dark. Again, adding in layers. And if you want, you can go in with the same brush and add your highlights a little bit. Remember that if it's starting to look a little all the same color, you're probably missing something that's called contrast, and you need to start adding darker darks. I'm just going to keep adding streaks and strands of hair as much as I feel like is needed. I need a little bit more white in my highlight. I need a little bit more color. Alright, and once you get to this portion where you're starting to get a little bit more like I'm starting to feel like I need a little bit more detail work, I'm gonna stop. This is probably as much as I can do without getting out my liner brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some of this up here too. Get my darks, get my lights. Honestly, get my whites. I'm gonna mix some red and yellow with white to get a little bit more of like a blondish highlight. I'm doing the same process as before, adding the layers, adding the highlights, the lowlights, the darks. When you get to the point where you can't really add any more without getting smaller, you're just gonna you're gonna stop. Alright, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab a liner brush, and I'm going to do the bottom first. We're gonna do some wispies. And just start adding these. You'll know you'll have the right water to paint ratio when you can do a whole wisp without going back for more paint or water. I'm going to put a bunch right at the bottom, because that's where the main amount of, like, the main broken hairs are, essentially, are going to be at the bottom. And then once you get to the bottom, you're actually going to switch from from a dark to a light color. I'm going to use my blonde color with a little bit of white in it. And I think I'm done with the shirt. I feel comfortable with this shirt. If you're not done with your shirt and you need to work more on it, feel free to go back and work on it. I think I did enough to get the point across, and it's not, for me, it's not the focal point of it. So I feel comfortable, just keep moving. So we're going to do a couple like clumps of hair, clusters of hair. I'm going to go ahead and add some wispies out of these other places that would make sense to have, like coming out from the ear area. And make sure that all your hairs are just kind of going in all directions. Some are wavy, some are straight. And now I'm going to start adding them here and start building up that detail in the actual bun. And it's almost like coloring. I'm just going up and down, adding stroke after stroke. And if I need to push harder in order to get the paint, I know that it's time to go get more paint. And slowly yet surely, you'll just start adding all the detail necessary. And I'm going to go up top and add some of this detail. I'm adding just a little bit of the lighter blonde color. We're going to add some white here at the very top because the sun is shining on it. It seems pretty white. I still have some brown in my white, but it's very little. I'm just going to add a little bit of white to the outer edges of it, as if to say that the sun is shining on like the outer edges, almost like there's like this glow around it. And then as you're finishing up the top, don't forget to add all of the wispies. If you have a hard time intentionally being random, because I know that can be hard, just do your best. Alright, before I add to, I'm going to let all that dry. I'm going to add a little bit of ear highlight, because I forgot to do that before I did the hair. I use a combination of the browns and blondes to do a very rough shadow on the ear. That looks a little bit better. I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the rest of it. Alright, so that's the little bit of detail for that. Alright, so I think the last thing we have to do is the flowers, which I am excited for. So we're gonna go over just a little bit because I think it'll take a little longer than 5 minutes to do it. But I hope you'll stick with me to finish the painting. I'm gonna make some space here. Alright, I'm gonna make 2 colors. I have the pink here that I don't really have to change all that much. So I guess I just have to make the one color, which is the green. A little bit of green, tiny bit of blue. And mix that together. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this brown to it, make it a little bit more earthy toned. Maybe a little bit of yellow, except we need yellow anyway, so I might as well put that on here. The rest of my black, a little bit of white, more brown. And I think that this is a perfect green. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out where all my flowers are first. So with my filbert brush, I'm going to grab some white, and I'm just going to place them I'm just filling it in with white at this point. I'm not using any color right now. Alright, so there's that. I think I want to make this flower just a tiny bit bigger, just to kind of balance out the other flowers. There's that. So now that I know where all of that is, I'm going to take my medium to small round brush. I'm going to take this green, and I'm going to put in all of the leaves. Oops, my gosh. I was getting a call and I tried to put it on, tried to get out of it and it accidentally answered it. Alright, so as you're doing this, you can kind of start adding a little bit of that other half to it if you want, or you can just add them all and we can add all the darks and lows, the darks and highlights and lowlights, there we go, afterwards. So it's up to you. Yeah, so you can do it while it's wet, or you can do it while it's dry. If you want any of it to blend, it's easier to do that while it's dry. Or sorry, it's easy to do that while it's wet. And for these leaves, I'm just doing one side and then the other. For instance here, I can take the tip of the brush and just lay it down and pull it in, and that gives a good size. Or I can take it out, do one side and then the other. It's completely up to you. Alright, so that is pretty good. I'm gonna add a little bit of highlight. So I have my yellow and my green and a little bit of white for my highlight. Start off with just a little bit of highlight, and then you can always add more, but if you add too much, then you're gonna have to go back to darkening it. And essentially, since my lighting is coming from this side, just try to figure out which part of the leaf would be lit. And then you can come in with a darker shade of green and add any low lights or dark parts that you feel like you need to put back in. Totally up to you. I do feel like I need to darken up the areas underneath the flowers before I put in the flowers, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to take my dark brown I think I need to get some black. So let's go ahead and mix in some black with it. And when you weave it into the rest of the hair, just do it in sections so that it doesn't look out of place. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more dark because I covered up a lot of it down here. Alright, so we're gonna be done with that. Go ahead and finish up that, and I will be right back. My son just knocked on my door, and quiet time is over. Oop. Hello. Quiet time is over, so I need to go tell him what he can do until I'm done. So I will be right back. All right, but fear not, we are almost done. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, grab some pink, and I'm going to put it on the edges of these. And we're just going to start layering this up. And after I lay down this pink, I want to go in with my white. And I'm just going to kind of have fun and play with it a little bit. So now that's all kind of wet with white, I'm going to go ahead and mix in a little bit more pink to the edges. So again, I'm just putting another layer of pink on the edges, kind of mixing that in. If you feel like you have too much pink in the middle, because we still need to do that, that yellow, I'm going to grab some white, put it in the middle. I'm going to wipe it off, and then I just get to kind of work it in and rub it in. Mix it in, blend it in, however you want to phrase it. Alright, that is looking pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more white on this one. What's nice is if you need to, you can come back in with your green and kind of clean up any of the edges. Alright, let's go ahead and put in our yellow. And I'm just going to place this yellow in here by dabbing it. And then by by taking a little bit of brownish green, mixing a tiny bit of that with some yellow. We can give it a little bit of detail and shadow. I'm going to go back in with some whitish yellow and go ahead and put in all the highlight parts that pop. And there we go. There we have our flowers and our hair. I hope you enjoyed this class. This was a lot of fun. I love how the hair came out. The flowers look pretty. I really like the background. There's not really any, sometimes when I do a painting, there's like at least one part that I'm like meh about, but I really like everything about this. And yeah, I hope you had fun. If you are not on my Facebook group, I have a Facebook group that is open to anyone, obviously as long as you have a Facebook. I do ask that you only post things from my classes, because that's kind of the point of it, is to be able to share your work after class. When I used to do classes in person, I was able to take a picture after class and be able to share that. But I can't see your work unless you post it. So it's really important to me that if you do take a class, even if it's like a year from when this aired or when a past one aired, still go in there, post your work. You can find all of the classes in the albums, and you just click on that album, and then you add it to the album so that when other people go to that album, they can see everybody who's taken the class. And yeah, sometimes I forget to share that on how to actually add it to the album, because a lot of people add it to the wall, which is totally fine, but it won't automatically add it to the album. If you add it to the album, then it'll post it on the wall for you, and people can comment and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We will continue painting next week. Next week we're doing a pretty autumn like waterfall, and it should be a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next week. Have a great night. Bye guys.